6 is properties and binding. This is critical for you to be able to deliver your project, and also in the lab you will apply this. So please pay attention, and if you have any questions, ask as we move forward. Okay. So let me drive this explanation through an example that we have started looking at last time. So here is an example illustrating the benefit of using binding. So take a look at this slider and take a look at this text field, progress indicator, and a label. So whenever I change the slider value, the text field changes, this progress indicator and the label change the values. Not only this, if I come to the text box and change the value in the text box, this value I input in the text field will be reflected in the slider, and consequently will also be reflected on the progress indicator and the label. So in some real world scenarios, when we create user interfaces, we might want to define some dependencies between UI components. For example, this progress indicator and this label depend on the value of the slider. So what we want is, whenever the value of the slider change, we want this change to be pushed to these two components. We want them to be notified so they can change their value. So in this scenario, what we have in this scenario, we have a one-way binding. We have a one-way link between the two, between the slider value property and between the progress indicator and the label text, which means any change in the value should be reflected in these two. Now, I mean these two, okay? Now, between the text field and the slider, there is also a relationship, a dependency, but it is bidirectional. Here it's one way, in here it's two way. If the value property of the slider change, we want that to be reflected on the text property of the text field, and vice versa, as you saw here. So binding or dependencies could be one way, such as the example dependency between the slider and the label and the progress indicator, while it could be two ways, such as the case between the slider and the text field. So any change in the slider will be reflected in text field and vice versa. Okay. So to achieve this, creating dependency between components, there are two ways to achieve it. And I think the best way, as I promised you last time, is to go through and rebuild this ourselves. So I can show you exactly how we can achieve it. First, using the first way, which is using event listeners, or change listeners. And the other way is using binding. So let us try to do this super quickly together. So hopefully you get the clear idea how this is achieved. So let's create a new project. And I'll create a plain Java project. And I will call it here binding example. I'll go next. I'll add JavaFX library. So I add library here, user library, next, and JavaFX. Some of you reported that when they import the project does not work. So if it doesn't work, please go and right-click on the project and add the JavaFX library. Let me show you. So if, let's say I downloaded this JavaFX project, I import it into Eclipse, and for some reason it doesn't work. I see a lot of errors, which means it doesn't recognize JavaFX. All you do, right-click and go to build path. You see it here, build path, and then go to add library. Add library, and you will see here user library. Go next and tick the JavaFX and go for finish. If you have issue, if you don't have issue, then it's fine. Okay, but when you create a new project, you can do so at the time of creation. So here is the new project. I will call it again binding example. Okay, and I go next, go to libraries, go to class path, and then add the library. Go next and select JavaFX. You must do this, otherwise you will not have access to JavaFX library. And then finish. You don't create anything extra, just plain empty project. Only references Java, SDK, and the JavaFX library. Okay, so now let's start as usual. We start with the UI design. So I'll go here and say other and create an fxml file. And here I will call it, just let's call it the view. Okay, here's my view. All right, so what I will do here, I will go ahead and open this one in Scene Builder to start building my user interface. Okay, anchor pane. No, I don't want to create an anchor pane. I will be using the grid pane because it has rows and columns. Here's my grid pane. Drag it in here. So it has already a couple of rows and columns for me. So what I will do here, here's my slider. Drag it in here. Let me put some label with it. Here is the label. And in this label will be select a value, for example, yeah. I'll come to this slider. I want to have show tick marks and show tick labels, okay? And in here, the major tick marks, I want it to be 10, which will go from 0, 10, 20, and so on. And I just want, instead of too many little small ticks, I just have one, which means I can go from 0, 5, 10, just to make it easier, okay? So this my slider is ready. Let me give it a name. So here I will call it, let's say this is the project progress. How far are you progressing on the project? 90%, 80%, 70. So let's call it progress slider. That's it. That's all I have. Now, you might not like to enter data using the slider. You want to just write it directly using a text field. I can give you that experience as well. So it's up to you. You can enter the value using the slider or enter the value using text field. And I keep these two synchronized. That's my goal, yes? Okay, so in here, in this label, what I will do here, enter value. So with the slider, you select the value. With the text field, you enter the value, okay? Here's my label done. I'll go here and find the text field. Here's my text field. Drag it in here. Here's my text field, and I will call it progress text field. Yes, that's it. Okay, I will just keep it simple and add progress indicator. Just another way of visualizing the progress as a pie chart.
What's the difference between the blue and the...
I think these are styled. I haven't played with them. I think they have different style in terms of visualization, but I haven't played with them. It's a good question. Because this is a big elephant, I'm just concentrating on what is essential is already overwhelming. So I just try to limit my curiosity. Otherwise, I already spent so much time on this. Okay, so let me drag this one here. Let's just keep it simple here. Let me reduce the size of this one. Let's keep it simple, just like this. So my goal is to keep these three controls on the right side, to keep them in sync. Whenever the slider change, I want to reflect the change in the text box and vice versa. And whenever any of them change, I want to reflect the change in the progress indicator. Is clear the goal? Yes, please.
Is there any limitation for entering value in text field? I mean, for example, the value should be integer or double or any value.
In here, you do it programmatically. Like not in here, you cannot specify rules. What you're talking about is the validation rules. Yeah, those will come later, but you do them programmatically. You write some program to validate the values. Yeah, but don't jump the steps. Take it slowly because this is a big thing. Yeah. All right. So let's just stay focused on what we have at hand. Okay, let me just name this one because I need to access it programmatically, so I must name it. So let's name this guy. So in here, I will just call it progress indicator. Yep. So let me just make sure here, everything is named, everything I care about is named. What I mean I care about, I'll be accessing programmatically. I must name it so I can access it from the program. So what I'll be accessing is progress slider. It is there. Nicely done. Progress text field is there. Progress indicator is there. I am almost done. All I need to do here is to put the package and the class name of the controller. Okay. So the package here, I will just call it here example, and I will call it here controller, just to keep it simple. Here's my controller. I can control S to save, and I can here go to view. Yeah, go to view, show skeleton, controller skeleton code, because I don't want to type all of this. Okay, copy this code here, go to go to my Eclipse, right click on source and paste it. Dr. Said told me this, some student told him this, you can just paste the code and it creates the class, okay? So I used to create a class and then paste, no need, just straight, it creates the package and the class and everything. Amazing. Okay, now I just close this one, close it, I don't need it anymore, close it, and I will just drag it into the package. I should have created the package first, but I forgot, so no problem. Let's put it there. All right, so what I have now, I have my view, here's my view, and I have my controller, skeleton controller, and I can, for the actual launch application, let's not waste time on it, we'll just copy it from the existing solution. I mean the app. I don't need to spend time on the app. So let me paste it in here. You know what the app does. All it does, it's loading the view and then showing it in a scene and showing the stage. It's very straightforward. So let us test this. You can see here, there's my UI, nicely done. But did I achieve what I want? There's no synchronization whatsoever. Nothing is going on here. Yeah. So what is my goal here? To keep these three controls in sync, all the time synchronized. Whenever I change the slider, the text field should change, and vice versa. And whenever any of them change, the progress indicator should change. Two ways of doing this. There is a long way, and there is the efficient, the more concise way. Let's start with the long way. What do you think? What is the strategy? What do you think? How can we achieve this?
For example, text field with the progress indicator.
Sorry, what can we do?
Like linking it.
Linking it, yes. Linking it is that's the second approach. I want to show you the more straightforward approach or the long approach. The long approach will say, okay, I will go to the slider and listen to the change. The slider will become our celebrity. You remember last time?
Yeah.
We have these famous people. They have this famous Instagram account or Twitter account, and whenever they post an image or video, you see people tweeting about it and sharing it and so on. So we basically start listening to changes in the slider. Whenever there is a change in the slider, what should I do?
Do the same changes.
Take that value, the new value of the slider, assign it to the text field and assign it to the progress indicator. Yes? What else should I do this will do one way from the slider to the value, to the text field and to the progress indicator. I must add another listener, this time to the text field, to reflect the changes on the slider. So let's do the first one first. So what I will do here, I'll come to the progress indicator. Here's my controller. First, I need to do all of this. I need to configure this when the window shows, or when the view is loaded. When the view is loaded, I need to do this logic of listening. Okay. So how can I do this? What is the method that gets automatically called when the view is initialized? Yes, initialize. Did I spell it correctly?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So here is initialize, and then I'll take my slider. Here's my slider. And then I go to a property called value property. You can see here the value property. What is the type? Is a double property, because the value is a double value. Okay. And then what I do here, I'll say here add a listener. Can you see here add a listener? Okay. And then the listener, I will explain what's going on here. So I will go to this property and start listening to changes. And whenever there's a change, I get an event, and this event gives me three variables, or 3 parameters. I will explain all of them later. It gives me a variable that I can call whatever. In here, I call it observable. The second parameter is the old value, old val, and the third is the new val, the new value. Or let me call it new value and old value. Forget about these two. We don't care too much about them. We just care about this new value here. So what I mean here, I am watching this value property and I am attaching a listener to it. Whenever there is a change to this value, I get notified. And when I get notified, I basically get hand over 3 things. 3 things in the event. The event says to me, something has happened. I'm giving you 3 things. It's up to what you want to use. These 3 things is the observable itself, which is the whole field or the whole property. The old value and the new value. Yes? Okay. Now, as you can already guess, I don't care about the first 2 at this stage. I will explain them later. What do we care about when the event happens? The new value. Now, what we want to do with this new value? Take the new value and put it in the text field, and also put it in the progress indicator. Yes? Okay, so let's start with the progress indicator, because hopefully it is simpler. Here is the progress indicator dot set progress, I think. Yes, can you see here set progress? Yeah, and then which value should I pass to it? The new value. But the new value is an object, is the new value. And I'll say, please give me just the double value. Okay, so because it is an object, it has an attribute called, or it has a method called double value. I take that double value and assign it to the progress indicator. Yeah. The second thing, what should I do with the text field? Here is the progress text field. Progress text field dot set text. And what I put in here? The new value. See, here is the new value. And I want to get the int value of it. Yeah. And I want to, or let me see. Can I just do toString? Maybe I can just do toString. Let's see, okay? So I'll save and I'll run. So when I change this, can you see it? This one is not, no, this one is not working. You can see here it says already 100, already done, because it is expecting a value between 0 and 1. The progress indicator is expecting a value between 0 and 1. So 0.1 is 10%, 0.2, 20%. While this one is percentage, but it needs to be, to make it a decimal, we need to divide by 100. Because for example, 10, 60 now, it should be 0.6. So that's why this indicator is not working. So let's fix that first. So here it is, here is /1 divided by 100. So if it is 60, it will be 0.6. Yeah, if it is 90, 0.9. And here also, I didn't like too much that it shows all the decimal. So let us just do int value. And because this one is an integer and this one is expecting a string, it's not working still. I'll put here, I can do toString? No. So what I'll do here, string dot value of. I can take an integer and convert it to a string. He's happy now, yes? That's what I'm doing. Yeah, this is the double. If I just use double, it gives me all those decimals that I'm not interested in seeing. I just want to see. I don't want you to tell me I finished 70.15% of the project. So just tell me 70, 75 is enough. Yeah. Okay, that's why I'm just interested in the int value. But if I take the int and try to assign it to a text, it says no, it's incompatible types. So what I'm doing with the integer, converting it to a string, then assigning it to the text. Is clear? So hopefully, and why did I divide the first value with 100? To make it percentage. Okay, that's it. So hopefully now should be working. Okay, take a look at this. This is looking much better now. Yeah. Is clear? So what I'm doing, I'm listening to the value property change events, hooking an event in there, attaching an event to the value property. Whenever it changes, I get notified of the new value, and I take the new value and assign it to the text property of the text field, and assign it to the progress property of the progress indicator. And this way, I am keeping these controls in sync. There is a one-way syncing between the slider and the other two controls. But in here, if I come and change this, it's not reflected. Yeah. Now, there is only, so far we achieved one way. It's not doing the two-way between the text field and the slider. Yes? Okay, so how can we achieve the both ways? What do you think?
Add a listener for the text field?
That's it. We add a listener. We go to the text field. We go to the text property of the text field. We add a listener. We take the new value, put it in the slider. We just need to put it on the slider. Because the slider has another event handler, it will take care of reflecting the change on the progress indicator. Is clear? Yeah. And this is very common. I showed you before in Excel. Remember when it started discussion in Excel? Let me remind you, this is very common in UI to have some parts of the UI depend on other parts. It's very common, and it's your responsibility to keep them synchronized. I gave you the example before. If I put here 20 and 10, and then do the sum of these two fields using Excel. So now this sum here depends on these two cells. There's a dependency created between this cell and this two. Any change on this will be reflected automatically on the sum. So if I come here and say 80, automatically it gets reflected in the sum. So in a UI, it's common to create dependencies between components. Okay, good. So what I'll be doing now, I'll go to my go to my progress text field. Here is my progress text field, okay? And then progress text field dot text property. Here is the text property dot add listener. Yes, add listener, and this listener, it is I give it a lambda expression on what to do when this event happens. This is a lambda expression. If you remember it from when we did streams, this is a lambda expression. Magically, it will get 3 values. You can call them whatever. I don't care about this one. And this one is the old value. And this is the new value. Yeah? Okay, now, what should I do with this new value? Reflect it in the slider. So I go to my progress slider. Progress slider dot set value, I think. Set value. Yes, set value. It's expected double. Yeah. So how do I create double? I'll say here double of value of. Yeah. And then I'll give it the text, which is the new value to string. Maybe it's already a string. Let me see. Yes, it's already a string. Can you see it?
So
the data
what's the
type.
difference between the one we did before and this? Because it gives the value, the double value.
Yes, in here, let me show you why I'm doing this. Let me not burn the steps. If I just take the new value, which is a string, and try to assign it to set value, which is a double, there's a problem of data type. The set value is expecting a double, and I give it a string. Of course, it will be complaining. That's what it's, you see here what it's saying? It's saying the method set value double in the type slider is not applicable to argument string. It's saying it's incompatible data types. So I need to convert this one to double to make the method call happy. So one way to do it is just to do this double value of, you give it a string, it's converted to double. That's it. Yeah, that's all I'm doing. So let me save and run. Hopefully when I run now, so this one is still working, reflecting this. But now let's see, you know, I only finished 30%. You can see here, it's reflected back on the slider. Yeah, it's looking good. Now, if I change this, is reflecting any change I do on the slider is reflected back on the text field and on the progress indicator. Are you following? Okay, but you need to realize that, as I explained in here, the dependency between the slider and the progress indicator is a one-way, which means the changes of the slider are pushed to the progress indicator and reflected on the progress indicator. But between the text field and the slider is a two-way dependency. If any of them change, the change is reflected on the other part. It's clear? This is one way of doing it, is listening to change events of UI components and writing some little bit of code to reflect that change on other components. That's one way. The more elegant way of doing it is taking benefit or taking advantage of this feature in JavaFX called binding. Okay, so let me now show you how this is done. Let me close. Let me go here and say, I'm not going to do it this old long way. I'm going to do it in a simple, elegant way and basically link these two components together. So what I'll be doing, I'll say, oh, in the progress indicator, let's start with the progress indicator. Here's the progress indicator. I'll say progress value, progress property. There is a progress property. I want this progress property to be linked with what? Let's focus on the slide. So I want this progress indicator to be linked with the value of the slider. Yeah. So what to do this, all I do, I use this method here called bind, which is basically create a link between the two, link the two. Here is the bind, and then what I put in here, the other components. So this is the target, and that's the source from where the updates will be coming. So the source will be coming from progress slider dot value property, the value property. Yes? Okay. Okay, that's not, no, but in here, remember, we will have the same problem as before, because the value property, we need to divide it by 100, if you remember. Yes? We need to divide it by 100. So in here, we have this method called divide, and I'll give it here 100. And that's it. So instead of listening to events and changing the UI ourselves using code, I just need to bind these two UI components. And I'll say, I want you to take the progress indicator, the progress property, and link it with the slider value property, which means I'm telling you, please, whenever the slider change, reflect that change in the progress indicator. Let's first run it, see if it works. See here, it works perfectly. With one line of code instead of doing it the long way. And it's much more elegant, much more concise. Okay, so that's what it means by one-way binding. Now, I'll do the same with the text field, the progress text field. You see here the progress text field so far, it's not synchronized. It's not synchronized. Whenever I change this, the change is not reflected, yes? The change is not reflected on the text box. So let's do the same for text box. So I'll do here progress text field. Progress text field dot text property dot bind. Now, if I do bind, it will be same as the indicator. Let's do bind. Let's do bind first. Here is bind, and then I will do the progress slider dot value property. If I do this, this one is text, this one is double. It doesn't like it too much. So what I'll do here, value property dot as value, sorry, that's value, not get value, no. Dot value property, yeah, this one. Dot as string. And I want to only get the integer value, similar to string format. So I only want the integer value. So I am binding the text property with the slider property, the value property of the slider. So let's see what will happen. So if I run this, there's a little bit of problem here. Maybe because this is a writable as a string. Okay, let me just put here /f. This is because maybe that one is double, so I have to say make it double, but I don't want any decimals. So let me try it, hopefully. Yes. Okay, so you can see here it is reflecting. Can you see it? Yeah, thanks to this binding. So in here, when I do binding, what's happening is this is the targets that will be updated, and this is the source. This is the source from where the updates will be coming. So this is now depending on this. Whenever this one changes, it gets reflected on the text property of the text field. But we haven't achieved fully what we want. See here, when I change this, I cannot change it anyway. I cannot even change it because it is already bind. Once I bind it, the value is only coming from the slide. I lost the ability to change the text field directly because the binding is one way. You cannot say, oh, this text field depends on the slider, and at the same time you are allowing changing it. So if you want to allow both sides, like for the binding to be bidirectional, where the changes of the text field will be reflected on the slider and vice versa. So in that case, instead of using bind, what you will use? Bind bidirectional. Can you see it here? Bind bidirectional. And I'll say, please go ahead, bind this to this. And instead of changing it, if I just stop here, this is complaining now. It says you are trying to bind the string property with double property. There's a problem here. You need this binding needs a little bit of help to allow it to convert from string to double and vice versa. So to do this, there is in Java something called a number formatter, I think. Number formatter. Number format. Formatter. No, not this one. No, I think this one. Number format, not the formatter. Number format dot get instance. Get number instance. Anyway, I don't really understand too much this, but this is how you give this object. This object is kind of a helper that will allow the conversion. Okay. I'm just taking it as it is. So this will solve our problem of converting from double to string and from string to double. Now, if I run this, no problem now. This is synchronizing nicely. If I change this 80, it is both ways. Yeah. So you can see here I achieved my goal in 2 lines instead of having this 6 lines or so. Yeah. So this is the power of binding. So let me explain it now. I hope it's clear. So binding enables propagating change. Something changes in one UI component, and that change is sent to other UI components. So what I have here, the targets, which is in our case, for example, the label, or in our case, the progress indicator is the target, is listening to updates from the source. And the binding could be 2 ways. Could be done in there are 2 types of binding. There is the unidirectional or one-way binding. And the way you do it, you use this method called bind. So what you do is you go to the UI control, which property you want to change, which property you want to link or to bind to the source, and you say here, please go ahead, link for me the text property of the label with the value property of the slider. And I want you, because this one is double and because this one is text, I want you to convert this one always to text, and I'm not interested to see the decimal. That's why I put this %.0f. So in here, it will establish a one-way binding where any changes in the slider will be pushed to the label automatically. Yep. The other way of doing it is to have a 2-way binding. In a 2-way binding, what I have is I have a 2-way binding between the value property of the slider and the text property of the text field. And instead of using bind, I use bind bidirectional, and I give it the slider property that I want to bind to. And because these properties happen to have different data types, I need to give them a little bit of help for them to convert from double to string and vice versa. So I give them this format, number format that get number instance, and this will do the magic. And this way, it is bidirectional. Can you see here the arrows on both sides? Any change on any of them will be auto-reflected on both. Is the idea clear? Okay, good. All right, so now you can see here all the time I'm saying property, 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 property. Okay, what is the story of this property? Because without having a property, you cannot use binding. Sorry, without having a property, you cannot use binding. So what is a property? So let me explain this. Let me explain what a property is and what power it provides us. So let me just create in here. Let me just create a normal Java program, a normal class. Here's a class with a main method. I will call it prop demo. Okay, in here what I have is, let me just create an integer, int x equal 60. Okay, and system.out.print line, and I put here x. Yeah. Now, if I go to this value x, do dot, there is nothing interesting there. Nothing whatsoever. I can't do anything. What I can do with x, what is the only thing I can do with x? Change its value. I can only store. It is a mechanism for storing some values, and that's it. No other capability I can do with x, with this integer. Now, what I want to do, I want to take this integer and make it a celebrity. Make it like famous, important little thing, where other things can come and watch it and start monitoring its value and start getting updates whenever the value change. Okay, so here is my poor x. Nobody knows about it. Nobody cares. Okay, and suddenly we want to make it famous and everybody cares. So what we do, we put it inside the property. We wrap it in a property. We take it, we wrap it inside the property, and then we wrap it inside the property. And suddenly, people can come and add a listener and get updates and get value updates. Another way to say it is we take this variable and make it what? Not celebrity. What do we call it? Unobservable. That's it. Thank you very much. So property is a mechanism to allow us to go to any poor variable nobody knows about, and we make it unobservable, which means others can listen to its changes. Okay, so here's how we make it observable. So all I do, instead of having instead of using int, I use simple integer property. Can you see it there? Simple integer property. And in here, this is now an object. It's no longer just a simple variable. And then here I will say new simple integer property. And then I'll put here the value, whatever value I want. Yep. Now, what I can do now, this is my int prop. Can you see it? Int prop. Here is my int prop. And as I told you before, I can basically go to my int prop and add a listener. Can you see here? We have so many methods now because it became a property. So I can add a listener. Remember the listener? What we get when we define a listener? We have the three values. Okay, I will call it this time observable. You can call it whatever. Observable, old value, new value. Okay, let me take this one here and show you each one what it has. This is the new, this is the observable, this is the old and the new. Yep. Okay. Oh no, sorry. I can just copy this. This is the old value. And this one is the new value. Okay, in here what I want to show you is get value. This will give me the 60 that I had here. Okay, so now let me show you. If I go here int property, no, sorry, I go here int prop dot set value, or just set, and I give it was 60, I give it 100. Let me make this a little bit more sophisticated. So what I will do here, new, old, and new. Okay, so I'll say here old value, this is D, and new value, this one is also D. And what I'll do here, because this is an object, I just want to get the okay, all right, this one is already just the actual value, no problem. Okay, that's it. So what I'm doing here, I created a property, added a listener, and I change. Whenever this change will happen, that listener will be called. Okay, so let's now run this. Right click and run. Here's what's happening. Let me just put one more thing here, just to make it easier for us to read. You see here, here's my observable. The observable is the whole object that is basically the observable is this one, the value, the whole object itself. The old value and the new value. You can see the first time I change it, the old value was 60 and the new value is 100. Second time I change it, the old value was 100 and the new value is 200. And this is the last one, of course, is 200.
So does the work as whenever there is a change?
Whenever there is a change, I add a listener. Whenever there is a change, whoever is interested can get notified. This is the power of property. And property is a precondition for us to use binding. Okay? So next time I will show you a much more interesting, let me just run it just for you to be aware of this. Let me just run it here. When I run this one now is a full example. Please take a close look at it because this you will need in your lab and your project. This one, this last example, 08 binding student app. It has all what we have seen in a very nice, complete application. So in here I have a list of students and I can click here and update. And I can do whatever update I need. It gets reflected automatically. And then I can, of course, delete, I can add, and I can save back to the file. Okay? Just one last thing I want to show you. If we will look closely, what we're really doing, we're taking the student object, and we have the user interface, the student view that has the text boxes and so on. I mean this one. We're taking the student object and we're taking the student form, and what we're doing, we are doing binding between the student object and the form. Any change on the object is reflected on the form and vice versa. We don't need to write any code to take values from the object and write it to the UI and vice versa. All I do is I bind my ID field text box, which is the text field, with this student ID property. And the email field, the email text field, I bind it with the email property, and so on. The only thing for you to do this, in your student's object, you need to define your attributes as properties rather than simple types. Rather than having the ID as integer and the first name as integer, you make them as simple integer properties, simple string property, and so on. Yeah? So inshallah, we will see this in more details, but that is the power of binding. Not only you can bind UI components together, you can also bind object to UI components. And this is very important for you to create forms for adding and updating and deleting. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you very much.